Well, U.S. Representative Steve Womack has been in Congress since 2011. He sits on the very influential Appropriations and Budget Committees. And the budget is a big part of the health care debate that saw some movement this past week. I caught up with Congressman Womack late in the week. Congressman, it's been a busy week in Congress so far, busier still to come. Let's talk about health care first and foremost. It does appear that there may be some sort of breakthrough with the House Freedom Caucus in terms of at least some parameters for a health care reform bill that would allow for repeal and replace. Tell me what you have seen so far and whether or not you like what you have seen so far.
Well, first of all, Roby, I think we have to go back and understand that the motivation here is that Obamacare is failing. Premiums have gone higher, deductibles have gone higher. It just hasn't accomplished what it set out to do, and that we have a strategy that we campaigned on, that we talked ad nauseum about a repeal and replace mechanism. Now, as you know, a few weeks ago we had this teed up and we're prepared to take it to the floor and get a vote on it and get it over to the Senate, and we just didn't have the vote. So in that time frame between then and now, there have been ongoing negotiations. Here's the fundamental problem that our side of the aisle had. We weren't going to get any Democrat support, but what we had was a kind of a give and take between moderates of the Republican caucus and the House Freedom Caucus. And every time there was some type of appeasement, either to the right of our group or to the left, that it would take away votes from the other side. So in the last few weeks, there have been ongoing negotiations about what can we do to answer the questions or the concerns from both sides, realizing that the majority of House Republicans were ready to take the bill to the floor. So what has happened? The most recent activity has been an amendment offered, a language offered by Tom MacArthur, who's with the Tuesday group, that basically answers some of the mail from the House Freedom Caucus. Freedom Caucus really, Roby, wanted an outright repeal. And so they didn't think that our measure went far enough. Tuesday group, moderate Republicans, thought it went too far. So they've tried to negotiate this issue of essential health benefits, primarily pre-existing conditions as another one, to try to figure out what can we do to maybe devolve some of these decisions back down to the state for a waiver opportunity that would guarantee the pre-existing condition would still be met, that the guarantees under Obamacare would still be met, but give the states some flexibility on how they would deal with it, with certain guarantees in place if the states went the waiver route. So that's kind of what has taken us to the present.
Well, let me ask you this, guy. It's more in theory right now because we don't have any practical application of it unless you look back to the far past. How do you keep pre-existing conditions and not mandate that people buy health care insurance? There is not going to be enough money to support that if you don't have the non-sick people helping underwrite the cost of the sick people.
Well, that's part of this MacArthur Amendment language that would stop the gaming of the system, i.e. people who don't have insurance, not buying insurance, having a need for insurance and buying it after the fact. And so there's some language in there that deals with giving the guarantee that if you don't have a disruption in coverage, a lapse in coverage, that the guarantees in the Obamacare package are still there for you. But other provisions that states have to have high-risk pools, that they have to be able to prove that insurance rates are going to go down, and that there will be better access. In other words, in the language of the MacArthur Amendment, there has to be guarantees by the states who would seek this waiver opportunity to ensure that those high-risk pools, those high-risk candidates on insurance coverage can be accommodated by the states. So that helps us keep a promise that we're going to protect pre-existing condition, but at the same time give the states some of that leeway. How practically it works, I think, is to be determined, but at least we're at a position right now where we can get both sides, the moderates and the really hardcore conservatives, to come to agreement that maybe the time is rapidly approaching that we can have a bill that we can get the votes on the floor.
first of all, do you support the plan that is being floated right now between the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday Group, number one? And number two, will we see a CBO score of this bill before there is a House vote on it?
Well, to be determined on the CBO score. I'd like to see a CBO score on it, not that it would be the be-all, end-all of whether or not I'm going to support it or not. I'm a lean yes on it. We just got briefed on the meat and potatoes of the MacArthur Amendment this morning, and so my guess is they will get this thing in some kind of bill form and then present it back to the conference before they bring it to the floor. So, but yeah, I'd be a lean yes. I've said all along that we have voted many times to try to repeal and now replace the Affordable Care Act, and this is a representation of, I think, of our best effort right now. And we've got a real broad coalition of people in our conference, from moderates to very hardcore conservatives. And I would say this: if we can cobble together a replacement mechanism using the reconciliation process that we've all talked about before, and get this through, then I think it would be a major victory for the unified Republican government. And so I'll be very supportive of that.
Why not do something where Democrats are also supportive of this, moderate Republicans and maybe moderate to conservative Democrats? Is there not a bigger coalition there that would support doing something that would have more comprehensive support?
Well, that's a leadership question. I'm not engaged at the leadership level in determining whether or not we would be in a position to go across the aisle and find the kind of support we're looking for. I think there's been evidence already in this Congress that we're not going to get a lot of support for anything but just making tweaks to Obamacare. So I think that's, if I were rendering an opinion on it, I'd say that'd be pure fantasy right now, to feel like that we can go over there and make the kind of changes that we think are necessary that would achieve a lot of the objectives and goals that we think are important in this healthcare debate. If you're going to get Democrat support for that in the numbers that we're talking about, it probably waters down the bill where you lose a lot of Republican support. So I'm not sure that that's a productive exercise.
That's Congressman Steve Womack. By week's end, the healthcare debate still remains up in the air. We'll see if there's a vote next week or if it's going to take a lot longer than that. One last break. We're going to catch up with some other top stories of the week, a few things that you may have missed. Stick around.